Welcome, welcome, and welcome. Welcome to the virtual launch of OurDipper.com. We have enjoyed adding to our lineup, and today we have a great guest for you. Before we dive into the dynamic conversation that I want to share more about, just a little bit more about Dipper, which is a tech platform for all professionals of color, Black, Brown, Asian, and Indigenous professionals of all levels, including C suite to rate and review their workplaces. Members have profiles and can access the inside scoop on which companies to join and guess what? The companies to stay away from. Members can also engage with other members on Dipper's newsfeed. So today I'm really excited about this topic, right? We often don't talk about this topic, but today we're talking about cryptocurrency. So let me start by introducing our guest, Justin. Justin Rhedrick is the owner of BitcoinVegan, a transformational service. He has educated thousands of people around the world to learn the true nature and power of Bitcoin from appreciation to decentralization. And Justin was tired of the seemingly never ending paycheck to paycheck cycle of working in retail merchandising. And that's when he decided to learn more about Bitcoin in 2016. He was a part of the first 1% of the global population to buy Bitcoin when it was valued less than $1,000. He's since reached 1,000% return on investment with his initial Bitcoin buys. And now he's looking to impact the world and actually change lives with the true power of Bitcoin. So, again, I'm so grateful to have Justin here today and wanted to start by learning more about how you became interested in Bitcoin. So, Justin, I know growing up, what was your family's financial situation and
Mhm.
how did it impact your relationship with money?
I mean, going on, growing up. First of all, hello everyone. How you doing?
Mhm.
I am pleasure to be here. I was about to just go into the story, but first, just let me set the room and just
Yeah,
tell
of
everyone
course.
thank you for being here. Thank you, Miss Netta, for allowing me on. This is such a great
Absolutely.
opportunity. So growing up, it was always kind of like a seesaw thing, kind of up, kind of down. Um, like there were times like where I was first born, we we lived in a good neighborhood, but it wasn't, what you would consider, well off. And then for a
Right.
few years,
Right.
you know, we were in a good, well space. But things started taking a real downward hill around the housing market crash, and that was like in 2006.
2000, yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Around 2006, around 2008 as well.
So
Yeah.
I was a senior in high school then, and I didn't really understand what was all going on, but like our house was foreclosed on.
Yeah.
Then I had bounced around from house to house, and I had to forego my senior year to play basketball. I didn't wasn't able to play basketball because I transferred to different schools too late to play.
Yeah.
And so during that time, I was just hanging out, with some of the basketball players and just going to parties. And I realized I wasn't on the same focused path. And then one of my friends was killed at a party when we were in high school.
Wow. Wow.
And so that started shifting my mind a bit. Um, I still was able to graduate high school, but it wasn't really with too much goals in mind other than just, leaving where I was. And
Yeah.
so then from there, I had gone to college. I went to North Carolina A&T for 2 years. And then I dropped out of school. I dropped out of school because I wasn't focused in school. North Carolina A&T is a great university, but it was also a party town as well, depending upon what your focus was. So at that time, I really did not know how to focus on school with lack of finances, and I was just doing a lot of partying. And then one day, I remember I dropped out of school the semester out of making the dean's list, but I dropped out because I was in class one day and I remember the professor saying, well, there won't be jobs in your field for like the next 5 years after graduation.
Yeah.
And that just struck a nerve in me. I was just like, so what are we going to do then?
Yeah.
Like
What were you focused on?
I was in business.
Yeah.
I was only in business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just stuck like, well, what are we doing here? So I just started piecing things together differently. I started seeing what the world looked like when, you really only survived on a job,
Yeah.
so, and not really planning. So, but from that moment, I said, well, I'm just going to drop out of school and go home and work.
Right.
Um, but from there, then I dropped out of school, started hanging with another crowd of people, and I ended up going to prison for 3 years.
Wow.
And
Yeah. And I was gonna actually ask you about that. And I know you and I had spoken in private about this. And I thank you so much for being open with me and sharing this, right? Because that's definitely a life-changing event for sure. But can you share what your experience was like after you were released?
mhm,
And even your experience, within prison and you started, because I know you started to look for a job, right? And
yeah.
how did your potential income growth and how your employers treated you lead you to entrepreneurship?
Oh well, when I was in prison, I really just learned. I knew how to learn. Like I knew I wasn't, I wasn't stupid or anything. But I just made crazy decisions. And I started realizing like the type of decisions you make when you don't have, money or any type of financial
Guidance.
literacy.
Yeah.
Like that drives people insane. And people do crazy stuff like commit crime. However, from there, I just really started focusing on like improving my mind, my
Right.
mindset, reading things. And so I told someone in prison, I said, I'm gonna make $1 billion no matter what, no matter where I come from. I just said it's gonna be a great comeback. That's all it was to me. So then when I came home from prison, I would look for jobs and you know I I I was like so far removed from prison. Like sometimes I don't even realize that I was in prison. But I
Yeah.
was just like really trying to go get jobs, and I was getting turned down for everything. I got turned down for 2 men in the truck.
Yeah.
I got turned down for like dishwasher work at a restaurant. I got turned down for a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
So,
Your experience coming out of prison was not an easy one, right?
mm-mm,
Like you're
mm-mm,
saying, you were getting rejected.
mm-mm.
And how did that make you feel? You must have felt like, hey, where do I go from here? Did you
Well,
feel a sense of hopelessness or
oh no, it was no hopelessness at all. Like
okay,
I've always felt I was gonna
felt
win.
encouraged to continue, even though that
Mm-hmm,
door was shutting on you, you still wanted to kind of pursue in that path. Yeah.
mm-hmm. I always felt I was gonna win. One of the things I learned in prison was how to box. And, coming out, I would go to the gym here in Charlotte and I realized like life was still worse than boxing, but boxing helped you go through thinking
Yeah.
about life because it doesn't stop coming,
Right.
So I just said, well, if I'm going to go through all of these no's and have all these doors shut in my face, and I might as well just go ahead and be an entrepreneur. Because I looked at the advantages I had that most of my friends who graduated school didn't have, was they said that, well, I don't have time. I don't have time. I had all the day, all the time in the world to try to sit down and create something.
Yeah.
So,
And learn, right? You have the
mhm.
ability to really learn it and hone in on it. What got you excited about Bitcoin
Man, the first thing that got me excited about Bitcoin,
or cryptocurrency? Yeah.
well, we can really say Bitcoin. I'm more of a Bitcoin person.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
But with Bitcoin, and we'll get, matter of fact, the way I answer that question will let you know. So a good friend of mine, Isaiah Jackson, he goes by Bitcoin Zay. He's the first person to introduce Bitcoin to me. And what really got to me, not just the fact that it appreciates in value or, it's a medium of exchange, but it was decentralized. So that it was a money outside of government and bank institutional control. And that immediately put me in the mindset of like how we would use stamps as currency in prison. So you would get ID cards, and if your family can't send you money, then you would have to have some type of means of currency to transact to buy things. And
Right.
so I looked at Bitcoin like how they were stamps, and then I could actually see how it could work amongst people. So that got me going, and then just the fact that I remember, like, because I would sit at home some days, and I'd be like, man, how can I, you know, where's the world going? What's the next? What's this big thing out here? Because I was
Mhm.
looking at people taking off in tech, and it's like, man, I gotta learn, I gotta learn how to code for 2 years to
Did
try to
you feel like
build
you have to
something.
go back to school in order to
Yeah.
do that?
Or
Yeah.
if I have to go to, real estate, if I have to do something, I'm just like, man, like everything seemed like it was, though how people say, well, it takes you 5 years to get going. It's like, man, do I really want to grind out 5 years in the industry that I feel is already saturated? Like I was looking for disruption. I
Yeah.
was looking for that thing where,
And
just
Justin,
being there.
did you feel that way because you felt perhaps maybe you lost some time while you were in prison,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And you're like, okay, the next thing that I do, I want it to not only be lucrative from a financial impact, right? But like you also want it to be meaningful, right, for your life.
Hmm.
And my question there is we talk about the financial piece, and I know in the beginning you had said, hey, I want to be able to make $1 billion at some point. Like I know I'm capable of doing that, but what else is that connected to? Like what is the deeper meaning to, like, aside from the financial and the money piece of it, what moves you?
Oh, freedom. Absolute freedom. Total
Okay.
freedom. You know, even just looking at the pandemic,
Mhm.
um, if it weren't for Bitcoin, I don't know where the world would be right now.
Yeah.
We could look at how, even though, previous performance in history doesn't really determine what the current outcome would be. But if you look at how in, the last housing market crash, Bitcoin was there, but no one knew about it, how the world just suffered. So
Right.
now that there's another avenue, but it's not just, again, with money. It's just about how, let's look at it like this. And I can actually finish that story with tying it in with freedom. With Bitcoin, with me having, a record, I was still able to buy into a currency without all the barriers of entry. I
Hmm.
didn't need several $100,000. I didn't need several $1,000s to buy a property. I didn't need to be some accredited investor to know about what I'm buying. So my idea was, hey, Bitcoin is so free, I can just hop into this now and then learn from there. Because I remember reading this man in India. He cut out a hole in the wall and he just put up a tablet, and the children knew nothing about technology, but they would go there every day and play with the tablet. Then one would teach someone else. Then they taught the whole village by 30 days. But another thing that was amazing was that the tablet was in English. So it proved that you didn't really need to know 100% about how things used to go to operate in the new world. So that's where I saw a lot of freedom with Bitcoin and just taking advantage of innovation.
Yeah. Now that's awesome. And innovation is key, right? Especially today. Um, I'd love to hear, what was your reaction after your first investment? And did you feel relieved or were you worried about your investment? I think that's, when people talk about cryptocurrency or even Bitcoin, you think about, or anything, right? You think
Hmm.
about the investment that you're putting in and the potential loss,
Hmm.
especially if you don't know too much about it.
Right.
You were learning, right? You were learning. So what was that feeling like? And the
When I
process like for you?
when I first bought Bitcoin, I was I was elated because like I learned about Bit, so I was still working, so I would get paid every 2 weeks. So I was in the middle of that next pay period, and I was just like, man, I'm gonna be able to buy Bitcoin. I'm gonna be able to invest in something. And I wasn't fearful because I really had nothing to lose. In my opinion, it was like, hey, if it doesn't work, can't say you didn't try. You lost time in your life in prison. What's a few $100s? However, if it does work, then and now I was pretty faithful. It was because I just studied the charts, and one of the things that I noticed a lot on the charts was there was a real dip. So there was some type of validity, and I noticed that Bitcoin just had different properties that made it valuable. So I coupled that with just human nature and innovation. I was like, all right, this will work out. So I wasn't too fearful, but I will say when I experienced my first dips, I was like, wow. But it was the ride that it was meant to be. You gotta mute.
Look at that. Thank you for that. I know you spoke a lot about freedom, right? And also what you kind of touched on is the equity piece, the opportunity and the access for you because you saw the door closing up on you. And now here is this new thing. And you
Hmm.
had an opportunity to tap into that 100% with no door closing on you. Um, and you're moving at a fast pace, right? Like I see you speaking all over about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, um, and what I love about you is that you're not afraid to share your story.
Oh no.
And that story, around because that is that's a very sensitive moment in your life, and that story around um, not being on the right path because you didn't have that guidance, in your life at a young age,
Hmm.
knowing that you're on the wrong path, but wanting to do good, but not seeing that way out.
Hmm.
And then also then getting into prison and still being hindered on finding a way out, but making it out. And
Right.
I think that's so powerful. It's so powerful for you to continue sharing your story and the way that you're driving efforts within this space.
One of the reasons why I share the story, because I remember I would go to um, a coaching call, and they said, the stories you share be the gems for other people.
Right.
So I started sharing the story, and then on Clubhouse, we do a room call from bars to Bitcoin. So we invite people who've been incarcerated, either their family members or they're incarcerated or they're formerly incarcerated or they work with those individuals. And it's like, all right, why would I do it? I mean, I'm not the only person, but it's really probably the only person
Right.
who's able to make it happen. So it's like connecting those dots and teaching people how, you know, when you have too many billionaires talking to a specific group of people, and it doesn't just have to be folks just out of prison, but it's hard to relate. It's hard to relate when someone like Michael Saylor can borrow debt to buy hundreds and thousands of Bitcoin. You're figuring like, yo, what I'm gonna do with my check? How I'm gonna do this? So it's about making it practical, but also really really closing that enormous gap that we have, but also allowing people to know that wealth is something that should be taught to everyone.
Yeah.
And
Do you
and
feel like it's not taught to everyone?
I mean, it's like this. No, it's not, because it really wasn't taught to me at the level it is now.
Right.
But the level I'm at now, there's some of our counterparts who are there at like 10.
Mm.
So, it's not taught at the correct time.
Yeah.
And that
What
was
would you say
another
the correct time is?
formative years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like how sometimes parents take sports serious. You want to teach a child how to box. You want to teach them how to play basketball at two
Yeah.
or three. Well, with my children, I still at least say something to Bitcoin, and he's 9 months. You know,
He's gonna know, right?
like we got to get this
He's gonna
work. Yeah,
understand. Yeah.
but it's really like you're setting the tone.
Right.
So like that was another reason why I hopped into Bitcoin, because I'm here to set the tone for my generation, my lineage. To break like what we talk about, generational curses, or to even build generational wealth, or even sustain it. Because there are a lot of people on this call probably already have it, but whatever you have will still be subject to whatever happens with the current
Right.
system.
Yeah. And so what you
However,
talk often about is legacy, right?
mhm.
How you're going to equip your children with the tools that you know, the knowledge that you know. And I think that's really, really important to drive that. Um, we have someone that just joined us. Hi, Jimmy. Thank you for joining us. Jimmy said wealth comes in various forms: financial wealth, physical wealth, cognitive wealth. And our American system wealth is built on Black slavery, African resources, sweatshops. It may be that as a few of us succeed financially, the rest are hurt even more.
You
Um,
know,
yeah,
can I speak on that?
you sure?
So, all right. So here's the thing, right? I like that. Because when you say on that, the reasons like we have a lot of black wealth in America, right? However, it's like we're way so much down because of the wealth we don't have. And when you think of numbers like um, what 17,000, this is what they say: 17,000 average family member black wealth and 1.2 trillion dollar spending power. You had a real bad negative.
Yeah.
It's like negative 1.2 trillion dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So within what he's saying, this is why I like the approach that I have now. Is like, well, corporate American people, they still want Bitcoin, but that's not going to change an entire. That's not going to, first of all, it's not going to bring on mass adoption. Only speaking to one crowd of people that you feel that can afford it. But it's also, not just speaking, but sharing knowledge, but also showing, empowering people how you can do this no matter how much money you have,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
you're here, like your purpose is greater. So, you know, traditionally it seemed as if like the messages weren't getting spread across throughout the entire community, but now everyone has to be included on the conversation.
Yeah, and I know you're all over. You're spreading the world all over, the word all over, right?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Junior, we have another person that said, leaving a legacy, you're on the right path. That really resonates for Junior, and it definitely resonates for me. Oftentimes
Mhm.
I think about my children. I have a 1 year old, I have a 2 year old, and constantly thinking, okay, what am I doing now to leave that pathway for them and for their children and their children down the
Mhm.
line, right?
Mhm.
And continuing that, but aside just from my own family, how do I impact other people within my
Mhm.
community, and how do I keep that going? And knowledge, the
Right.
knowledge is
Yeah.
so
Yeah. See, that's
is
the,
so
yeah, yeah.
important,
That's
right?
it's not it's like
It's so rich.
I remember I would do coaching between like when Bitcoin was in a real bear market, and I had a conversation with someone of a different race, and they
Mhm,
said, "I'm flat broke. I can't buy." I'm like, what do you mean?
mhm.
Well, I'm down to my last $40,000. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It was just taking you outside of what I'm like. Well, what I thought flat broke was, something totally different. But once I started realizing that life was about moving up the levels, that's where, even if you went down to nothing, if you know how to pass on knowledge that actually showed to work,
And
it'll work.
yeah, and honestly, I think knowledge is the real wealth when we think
Hmm.
about it, right? Because it's something that can easily be passed down. And I think, and I love your point on, um, we have to start teaching our children at a very young age of these things. And you said you're 9 month olds.
Yeah,
You're
his
talking
first
about
words
these
need to be
things, I'm
Bitcoin.
sure. Yeah, you're talking about these things, right? Another person had said, Justin is correct when he says teaching everyone about wealth should be universal. I absolutely agree with that. Another person said, such an interesting conversation. And Junior is back again. I'm reading all of these today. Junior said, our community speaks a lot about building wealth, but not enough time discussing debt and removing any financial dependency that may have occurred just through living life. We've normalized financial bondage. That's
Oh,
deep.
yeah,
And
that's
he's
and
right.
that's what
He's
Bitcoin thinks.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, so we did a summer camp here in Charlotte, me and my friend Bitcoin Zay, and we were teaching children about Bitcoin in simple ways.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we did where we showed them how like kind of the Federal Reserve works, where more people might give money and such things, but how things are not distributed evenly, right? And then, you start having the concept of like, okay, well, I'm just never going to get past some ceiling. Like I had that kind of ceiling, and once I started really seeing what it was, because I'll share this real quick. The reason in 2016 I was so confident that even learning Bitcoin, like you said, because even with Bitcoin being $600 back then, with the way I was working, buying $600 worth of Bitcoin would have probably wiped me out for the month. So I said, I'm going to learn Bitcoin hard, because I realized I had a friend. He said, well, financial advisors can't speak on Bitcoin because it's not a regulated currency. So a light went off in my head, like, well, let me learn as much as possible before you get the green light to do so. So now, since the table started, since things started turning a little differently, I knew that there would be a time that the world would need Bitcoin knowledge. And so I invested. That's why I said, well, if I spend 5 years investing my time and knowledge somewhere, it has to be somewhere that's going to change the world. And that's what I found with Bitcoin.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for dropping all these gems today. And thank you to all of our viewers that are chiming in. Another person said, knowledge is the real wealth because it sustains you and can help you think outside the box. And it's a new era, and we have to be able to generate multiple streams of income. Have a 9-to-5 will not provide the financial security that we need, right? Whew, this is a good conversation today, and I think we have to have more conversations like this. I also want to point right back to what Junior said. I think having conversations about debt, right, and removing financial dependency and all of that is so critical, because I remember at a young age not really learning much about what debt means or credit cards or credit, right? And then going to college, getting all these cards, but I'm not making enough money to pay it back, and it's not matching up, right? But little did I know it had a very long-term impact to where, like, literally just recently I'm like, okay, now my credit is at, uh, a higher point, but for a very long time I had to work through it. I had to learn, and it's not something that I had learned at an early age. So these things are very critical, and the knowledge that we share is really impactful too. Um, Yolanda said, "What was the attempt to discredit Bitcoin all about?" I think I know, but would love your thoughts. Discredit. I don't
Discredit. Well, there
know
have been
if
many.
anyone.
I don't know if I don't think she's talking about the comments. She might be talking about something on the news space.
Yeah, maybe she's talking about, yeah.
We could be talking about
Yolanda, feel
Elon
free to
Musk.
elaborate for us.
We could be talking about
Elaborate
the
for us.
infrastructure bill. We could be talking about a lot of different things.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Justin. We're gonna have to bring you back on. We're gonna have to have this conversation. Maybe we'll bring some of our viewers on with you so we can all have this conversation. Junior, I'm talking to you. And thank you all for tuning in. Again, head to ourdipper.com, set up your profiles if you have not done so. At ourdipper.com, we guide professionals of color to a better workplace, one review at a time. So you don't have to just blindly walk into an organization and not know what the experience is like. We want to tell you, right? It's all there for you. So head there and create your platform. Your sign up. So thank you, Justin, again, and take care, everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.